Subscribe, like, comment and share to support the channel. Thank you for the support.
We start off with a past memory of our young waifu Ayan, who is seen trembling as she readies her arrow against something with a fearful expression on her face. It turns out she was facing off against a Cerberus, the very same one that Vikir had killed from before. But this time, she stood against it alone with her back against a cliff while the other tribe members surrounded the beast from behind. Her fellow tribe members tried their best to grab the attention of the Cerberus by shouting at it, but it was of no use as its gaze was fixed onto Ayan the entire time. Just as the beast took a single step forward closer to our young maiden, she too takes a step back, which made the ground beneath her collapse. Play the slow falling music, people. As Ayan lost her footing, she fell from the cliffside and into the heavily forested area below. The sounds of tree branches being snapped at a fast rate could be heard as she made her way down before ending with a loud thud sound. Her eyes began to slowly open upon hearing various voices surrounding her. She soon sees a bunch of unfamiliar men looking at her. The group of men surrounded Ayan from where she laid with their carriages. Ayan could now be seen awake with bandages on her forehead, but a painful expression was what she wore on her face. She appears to be standing guard against something with a sword in her hand. It turns out that she had been placed into an arena where she had to fight against someone. The crowd goes wild as a man who appears to be her opponent is smirking while clasping his fists together. The bald-headed man starts the fight by rushing towards our girl in a mad fury. Ayan continues to be fearful about what was happening while her opponent was still smiling. But our girl ain't no little bitch, as she manages to cut the man on his shoulder while dodging his attack. But her cut only left a small wound as she turns to see what her attack did to the man, who returns the favor by grabbing her ankle while she was still upside down. Just like how our old siblings used to wrestle with us and went too hard, so did this man as he threw our beloved waifu hard against the walls of the arena, smashing the wood into bits and pieces, rendering her unconscious as she spits out blood and tears. The crowd of a-holes started to laugh as they hide their bitch-ass faces behind a mask. Ayan's opponent remained the only one standing, and basked in the cheers of the crowd as she laid on the ground. She regains consciousness, as her eyes remained opened while tears began to flow out of them. As she continued to cry from the pain, she recalled the memories of the people from her tribe and her own mother. As the crowd continued to cheer loudly, our waifu began her redemption arc as she places her hand heavily onto the ground. Her actions grabbed the attention of the nobles that sat behind her as she sat upright. She slowly stood up as her opponent was talking to another man, as well as recalling her memories with them where they had whipped her. She smears her own blood onto her face as a form of marking, giving her the strength and courage to prevail against all odds. Tears began to flow from her eyes once again. But this time it was not because of sadness, but because of the rage and fury that was built up within herself. But she isn't the main character of this story, sadly, as she still ended up behind bars as a slave. Her face seems to have given up all hope against escaping from the clutches of her captors as the memories of her tribesmen and mother started to fade. Her eyes remained dry, as no tears would come out anymore before slowly closing. A vial containing a red liquid was dropped near her as Ayan awakens from her slumber to see what it was. She sat against the cold steel bars of her cage in fear of the sudden appearance of another man. It turns out to be the moment that our boy Vikir had met her. Their meeting together had colored the once dull life that Ayan held before meeting Vikir as he tells her to go. We soon return to the present where she awakens from another slumber with tears in her eyes, probably due to her memories of the past events. As she laid on her mother's lap, her mother asks her if she had a nightmare, but Ayan didn't reply and remained silent. This prompts her mother to reveal that Ayan kept looking for Vikir in her sleep. She finally speaks with a flustered look on her face, telling her mother that the pain she was feeling was getting worse. Her chest hurts and her body was burning up, and it made her heart feel as though it was dried up. All these symptoms made her wonder if she had contracted the Red Death. She continues to tell her mother that she couldn't have it, and that what she was feeling right now was so painful that she regretted being born. Her mother started to comfort Ayan by telling her a story about how her father and her had buried a small seed in the ground. Her father had planted the seed while she was watered that seed every day. Not long after, the seed sprouted, and after several months it became a healthy and beautiful flower. Hearing that story brought more tears to Ayan's eyes, but here's a plot twist, everyone. Her mother then tells her that after they cut the flowers they extracted the sap and smoked it. They had gotten high and had some fun, which was how Ayan came to be. As her father had committed a bad deed, he ended up being executed by her grandfather. Such a sweet story to tell your kids, everyone. Ayan could only tell her that her body was getting worse after hearing the end of the story, but her mother gave her a piece of advice. You don't know what life will throw at you, you just need to live it. She continues to tell Ayan to wait a little, and that when Vikir returns after finding a way to treat the infection, but Ayan replies that she didn't need to comfort her. Ayan tells her that he wouldn't come back after recalling their last meeting with one another, but a member of the tribe shouts out that Vikir had returned. The announcement of Vikir's return continued on as they shouted that he had returned with the medicine. But just before Ayan's mother could tell her that she was right, our waifu instantly leaps out from her lap and runs towards where the shouts were coming from. This sudden reaction from her daughter kind of makes her angry as she watches her run at full speed, making her wonder if she had really contracted the Red Death like she said just now. As Ayan made her way at full speed, she recalled the past where she revealed that she was very scared back then. Even when Vikir was facing off against Madame Eight Legs, she stood behind the trees and watched him, which allowed her to see how he faced his fears, which was why when he had been knocked out by Madame Eight Legs, she was the one who rescued him from death, and that he was the reason why she could stand back up again. We finally have our sweet reunion as Ayan brushes past her fellow tribesmen to see Vikir standing right there in front of her. You came? Questioned Vikir as he spots her in the crowd. He tells her that he had heard from the warriors earlier that Ayan had gotten the Red Death, but our waifu is a woman of action, instead of words. She simply Randy Orton's our boy onto the ground. Watch out, watch out. Vikir simply laid on the ground with her on top of him, telling Ayan that if he didn't use his mana, then his back would have been broken. But he questions her on whether she had really contracted the Red Death, but all she tells him was that as soon as she had heard that Vikir was back, her body became lighter. Hearing that made him wonder if she was faking it, to which Ayan reveals that she was. With tears of joy in her eyes this time, she tells our boy welcome back. Taking a pause, Vikir tells her, I'm back. Night soon arrives as a single hut on the trees remained lighted. Everyone from the tribe were gathered around Ahul, who laid in the center of the hut, struggling to deal with the pains of the Red Death. Vikir kneeled in front of her with a pouch in his hand. He slowly unravels it, letting out a bright divine light from the holy water that the saint had made. As he continued to hold on to the vial of holy water, its radiant light started to spread around the hut. Its holiness was enough to cure Ahul, as the red spots on her face started to fade away as the holy light touches her. Hallelujah! Shouted Ahuman as he stares at Ahul's cured face with tears streaming down his. The other tribesmen couldn't believe what they were witnessing, as they could see that the light Vikir had brought was so strong that the Red Death disappeared. They rejoiced with joy as Vikir had brought the cure. Vikir then asks Ayan about how many patients they had. She tells him that including Ahul, they had about 30. Hearing that made him wonder about how many were there from the other tribes. Ayan reveals to him that the situation had gotten bad, and that many of the other tribes were on the brink of annihilation. Vikir estimated, based on her answer, that there were at least around 10,000 affected. So he tells her to gather all the sick from the other tribes. Hearing his request made Ayan wonder if he had brought along with him large quantities of the cure. He informs her that there was a lot, and that this was their chance to boast about their own tribe to the others. The other tribesmen overheard their conversation and started to cheer once again, calling our boy amazing. Vikir then changes the topic to the swamp monster called Ka, the ugly monster that they had met in the forest not long ago. He then informs the tribe that he had slain the ugly fish on his way back and wanted them to bring it back as food. Sushi time. The tribe goes wild once again as they called him incredible and amazing, to the point that they couldn't compare to him. Feeling that there was no time, Vikir turns to tell them to gather all the other tribes around the river catchment area. We soon arrive at the beautiful river catchment area. The first tribe we shall call the Punk Rock tribe had arrived. The Buff Daddies tribe soon arrived as well, and since we saved the best for last, I present to you our Mommy's tribe. These are not the tribe names that the author wrote, because there were no names at all, so I shall write it for the author. Comment below your favorite tribe. All the tribes stood behind Vikir as he continues to hold on to the vial of holy water that radiated brightly in his hand. He took a moment to look at the vial and waters of the river before he started to pour the contents of the vial into the water itself. As soon as the first drop of holy water hit the river, it spreads all around rapidly. The effects of the holy water don't stop there, as it continued to light its way across the entire stretch of the river along the forest areas. Soon enough, the clear blue waters of the river that Vikir stood across had turned into a bright divine yellow light. He then turns around to the tribe leaders to inform them that they just need to drink the water right now. Members of the tribe soon guided the infected to the edge of the river, helping them to scoop the divine water into their sick mouths. As soon as they drank the holy water, Their bodies were healed from the Red Death instantly, as they cheered in joy over being recovered. The tribe members continued to celebrate, exclaiming that their bodies felt lighter and that they were alive right now. Vikir informs Mommy that the purification is spreading from the catchment area, so the bacteria would soon disappear. She then decides to appoint Vikir as their tribe's shaman, but before he could decline, a buff foot stomps the ground heavily to cut the conversation between them short. This action catches Vikir's attention as he turns to see who it was that did it. It turns out to be the Buff Daddy's tribe leader, who stood tall and hard. He then began to shout out loud, "People of the deep forest, answer me. What's the name of the hero who purified the forest?" "Vikir, Vikir, Vikir," shouted the daddies, as they stomped their foot hard into the ground in unison, just like a haka ceremony. The other tribes soon joined in, shouting out, "What's the name of the person who saved our family?" "Vikir." "Who's the person who brought upon a bright tomorrow for the deep forest?" "Vikir, Vikir, Vikir, Vikir" was the name that everyone from each tribe shouted throughout the night. As Vikir stood in silence to witness their chanting, his eyes began to glow, as he knew that the wicked deed committed by the deadly Poison clan had turned into a favorable situation. The Baskerville clan that mainly pioneered and subjugated the Le Rouge et Le Noir mountain, and the Baskerville clan's natural enemy, the natives of the Le Rouge et Le Noir mountain. If he was able to win them over and repay them, Vikir knew that it won't be completely impossible to fight against the whole Baskerville clan. He lets out a devil-like smile over the thought that he could use this chance to land a huge blow onto Hugo. Mommy then announces to everyone that a festival would start today, and so they needed to prepare for it. But Vikir lets her know that there was one more thing he needed to do. Both Ian and Mommy would alarm to understand what he meant by that, as he tells them that they needed to find the one who spread the poison in the forest. The scene then changes to someone's hideout, made from a cave whose entrance was covered wood and a skull. Someone's thoughts started to play out. He noted that a lot of time has already passed, and he thinks that everyone should have gotten infected by now. He knew that he wouldn't have struck a deal with those Imperial druggies, but it was all because of that Imperial brat's fault. A figure started to appear in the shadows, as he continues to think that the moment when everyone is in despair, he would cure the infection with the antidote, so the whole tribe would have no choice but to look at him with respect and reverence. It was revealed to be the asshole shaman piece of poop. He smiles over the idea that infecting Ahul was a good one, and that no one would suspect him of infecting his own granddaughter. Now this is a face that needs to be punched. 1 like equals to 1 punch everyone. As he exited his cave, he thought about how his plan was perfect, but something causes him to think otherwise as he peeks out from behind a tree. He could see that his fellow tribesmen were walking around peacefully, with no signs of Red Death anywhere. He wonders how they were all fine, as he was sure that they would all be gasping for air because of the Red Death right before they commenced the ancestral rite. He even spots his granddaughter Ahul, who was perfectly fine, which made him wonder what was going on. This sight made him run to somewhere, as he called it, impossible. He soon arrives at the very same river catchment we were at before. He stares deep into the waters and wondered how the fishes in the river were alive, and that the river was purified as well. He even thought about how the water had gotten even clearer. "How?" shouted across his mind as he tries to figure out what went on when he was hiding in his bitch hole. "The river's rather clear, right, shaman?" asked Vikir, who appears by his side with a murderous aura. "Someone's gonna die." The shaman immediately turns around and calls our boy an Imperial bastard, but wondered when he had arrived here. But he soon spots all the other tribesmen that were gathered behind Vikir. Their faces were not filled with joy, but with a look that says someone has messed with the main character. Vikir looks at the shaman and recalled that the person who had spread the Red Death in the forest was just as he expected. It was the shaman. Before he had regressed, there was a time where stories about an old man living in the forest and his misdeeds were trending. It was a horrible story of a man who had spread an infection within his tribe due to his desire to become a hero. In turn, he couldn't cure it and killed most of his tribe's people. Based on what he recalled, Vikir concluded that it was this a-hole that stood in front of him. But the shaman still thought that there was no way Vikir knew that it was him. So he asked everyone if they had come out here to greet this old man. But our mommy appears and questions him about whether he had finished the ceremony well. The shaman stutters at first but tells her that he did, and assures that the infection would soon disappear, but she tells him about how she had heard that in the Empire, a war was declared between clans due to the Red Death. This was because the infection was found to be artificially created and spread. But she noted that it was strange, between the Imperial clan and the Deep Forest. She couldn't really see the connection and the reason why the infection was spread. The shaman grew nervous as he tells her that that was something he wouldn't know, and informs her that he came here right after performing the rite for the sake of the tribe's complete recovery. Then why did you come here instead of the village? Asked Mommy, which causes the shaman to freeze with fear. Gotcha boy. She turns to Vikir and noted that it was just as he said. She then slowly walks over to the shaman while telling Vikir that they should see if what he said next was right. Hearing their conversation made the shaman panic as he asked them about what they were talking about. A flashback is seen from when Vikir informs them that the shaman wanted to use this incident to become the tribe's hero. So, he would definitely have it. The cure to the Red Death. This time, the murderous aura came from Mommy. As she stares at the shaman with murder in her eyes, she calls out to him and tells him that she wanted to see what was in his pouch. Rest in peace.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.